In today's video, we'll be taking a look at this book, Brenton's Septuagint. To give you a sense for scale, I've created this Bible tower with the New English translation of the Septuagint, the Lexham English Septuagint, Volume 1 of Hendrickson's Septuaginta, Reader's Edition. This is Thompson's Septuagint translation. And so from the side, you can see they're very similar. This one, of course, is the thickest, and this one is the smallest. Hendrickson's edition of Brenton's Septuagint is 9.5 inches tall, 6 9/16 inches wide, and 1 64/100ths of an inch thick at the spine. That is 1.64 inches thick. It is a glued hardback. The text is presented in 2 columns. The English column is 52 millimeters wide. The Greek column is 82 millimeters wide. There are about 42 characters per line. I'm sorry, I said 42. I meant 45 characters per line in the English and 60 in the Greek. About 75 lines of text per page in the English. Only about 50 lines per column in the Greek. Page dimensions are 234 millimeters tall, 154 millimeters wide, so that is 9.2 inches tall, 6.1 inches wide. The margins at the top of the page, from the top of the text to the edge of the page, ranges around 24 to 26 millimeters. That's roughly an inch. The inner margin, which you see is very narrow here in the center of the book, is as much as 12 millimeters. The outer margin is also very narrow. It ranges between 4 and 7 millimeters. And at the bottom, from the bottom of the annotations, at the bottom of the page, to the edge is 24 to 28 millimeters. The print is dark, but it's an older print, so sometimes you'll find broken characters here and there. It's not quite as sharp as you'll find in a modern text. To give you a sense for variation in print darkness, I have page 81 on the left and 83 on the right, and you can see it's quite a bit darker on the left than on the right. However, the paper, as far as I can tell, the print never fades so much that it's difficult to read it. The English font here is about 7.5 points for capital letters and about a little bit bigger than 7.5 points for the lowercase. I compare that to Times New Roman. The line height is about 2.43 millimeters. That's from baseline to baseline. That's about 6.9 points. So if this text appears cramped to you, it's because it really is a little smaller than what you would normally find for a Times New Roman single line spacing. In the Greek, the caps are around 9.5 points when compared to symbol font. Lowercase are around 7.5 points. The line height is 3.53 millimeters. That's about 10 points. The text is not line matched, and perhaps you can tell that here by seeing how offset this word from the opposite side of the page is compared to the text here. Brenton does sometimes put added words, that is, smoothing words, in italic font, as you see here. And looking in the same sentence, you can also tell that Brenton does not capitalize pronouns for deity. There are page bottom notes. They are in about a 6.5 point font. Those are translation notes. We're at the beginning of the book of Ezra here, and as you see, there are no book introductions, and also it should be fairly obvious that the books here do not begin on a fresh page. The book titles appear at the outside top of the page. Book contents are there as well. The page contents are there, and page numbers are here. You also have the titles in Greek in the inner margin. So in Greek here and in English in the outside. There are no headings in the text, so nothing breaks the text up for you. There are verse numbers in the English. They are in the paragraph at the beginnings of the verses. They are small, but they're relatively easy to find. The verse numbers in the Greek are alongside the inner margin, as you see there. One of the difficulties with using Brenton's Septuagint is that it's not altogether clear where a new chapter begins. As you can see, the new chapter number here and the verse number for Genesis chapter 2 and Genesis chapter 2 verse 2 are very similar in size. And then there's nothing in the English over here that tells you that you've begun a new chapter. So that's something of a challenge. The paper has a sheet thickness of 51.6 micrometers. I then estimate the paper weight on the basis of that to be 47 GSM. There's only a light sheen on the surface. It's not at all disturbing. The paper is very nearly white, and there is some show through, but it is not distracting. You can see it here between the lines. Words can certainly be read through the paper, but it's not very disturbing. Brenton does sometimes give Greek titles for his books. So here we are at what he calls First Kings, and that's First Samuel in your Hebrew-based Bibles. So First Kings and Second Kings are not your First Kings and Second Kings. They're First and Second Samuel. And then when you come to Third Kings, that's what you would normally identify as First Kings. We go past that, past 4 Kings, we come to First Chronicles. So he isn't calling these books the books of Paralipomenon, as you would find in some other editions. Some other Greek book titles are used. If we go back here, we see that we have Isaiah, and we have Jeremiah, and some of the minor prophets are similarly named. We have Jezekiel, and then after Daniel, you come to Hosea. Hosea is Hosea. Joel is Joel. Amos is Amos. Jonah is Jonas. And so similarly, Habakkuk is Habakkuk. Zephaniah is Sophonius. And Haggai is Aggias. At the end of the book of Malachi, you find an appendix. This has some translator notes in it, too lengthy to put at the bottom of the page. Also, it tells you that some passages were translated from the Alexandrine text. Brenton typically uses Vaticanus, but sometimes he has to make exceptions. After the end of this appendix, you find 2 sheets, 4 blank pages of paper, normal weight paper. You come then to a section entitled Apocrypha. Oh, by the way, you will not find Psalm 151 in this Apocrypha section. It is back in the Psalms. And the books of the Apocrypha are these. Esdras, First Esdras, is a book like Ezra, Nehemiah, and Second Chronicles. Then you have Tobit, Judith, some additions to Esther, Wisdom, Ecclesiasticus, Baruch, the Epistle of Jeremiah, some additions to Daniel, 4 books of Maccabees, and the Prayer of Manasseh. And here they are in order. And after this apocryphal section, which spans a number of pages, it's numbered separately, by the way, so it's not numbered with the other Old Testament books. There's the Prayer of Manasseh at the very end. We come to a single page of heavier paper. It's a paste down construction with a paper liner. We have red head and tail bands. I'm not sure how well you can see those in there, but they are red, dark red. and black. Red and black head and tail bands. No ribbon markers. It's a simple black hardback. Texture is fairly smooth. There's a glued binding. You can see the line of glue there as well. And you see no hint at signatures. You can find no thread in the gutter. But it does lie open and relatively flat here in Genesis. So that's the beginning of Genesis, and not a lot of bend to the page. Unfortunately, as you go to the center of the book, you do see quite a lot of drop-off there into the gutter, which makes it somewhat difficult to read. This is one of those books that you have to adjust if you want to read the surface flat. Simply not enough inner margin in this design. So here's the front and the spine and the back with the ISBN. If we go into the front, we see the same sort of paste-off construction, the half-leaf, the full title page. Lancelot C.L. Brenton is the translator, Hendrickson is the publisher. The copyright page. This is the 22nd printing. This is a new copy that I got for this review, and my other copy is from the 6th printing. I may show you some of the changes. I think the most significant change really is that the paper in the older edition was just a bit heavier. The paper formerly was 56 microns per sheet, while this is closer to 52. We have a preface, and it does tell you here that Brenton's translation is largely based on Vaticanus. They say that Greek text is based on Vaticanus. After the preface, you have the books as they appear in order, and abbreviations and signs used in the notes. So these are the Protestant Old Testament books listed here. We've already seen the apocryphal books listed separately. An introduction, which is a historical account of the Septuagint version. And that goes on for just a very few pages. And no separation between that and the beginning of the book of Genesis. So here's a close-up look at the font, and we've already mentioned that it's somewhat of an older font, so you'll find some uneven characters that have darker print on one part of the character and lighter on another. You sometimes will find them broken and with little oddities here, like this tumor on the end of R in reptiles. But altogether, it's very readable. My problem, of course, is that it's very small font, and the line spacing is very tight. The Greek, on the other hand, is much more readable, I believe. We'll now take a look at some other English fonts before we move over to the Greek. So here on the left is the Shekinah Enterprises Thompson Septuagint, and it's a much larger font, much easier on the eyes. But the Thompson edition does not have the Greek text in it. Now on the left is the Lexham English Septuagint, which also is a much larger font. Not quite as darkly printed, though. Much better line spacing on the left than on the right. And now on the left I've brought in the NETS, the New English Translation of the Septuagint, which is a larger font, not printed quite as darkly, but with better line spacing. It's certainly a more modern and more attractive font on the left than on the right. This is a close-up look at the Greek font, and I think it's printed well. Line spacing is good. It is relatively sharp for an older font. It is possible to make out the diacritical marks without much difficulty. You can distinguish them fairly well. I find it quite readable. Now on the left, I've brought in the font from the Deutsche Bibelgesellschaft Ralph's Septuagint. And it's a more modern font, a little more attractive and sharply printed. It's also printed on a cream paper. At least my copy is. Mine is an older blue hardback. On the left now you see the font in the Hendrickson Reader's Edition, Septuaginta Reader's Edition. Much larger, not quite as darkly printed, more modern font, more crisply printed. Compare now with the font on the left, which is UBS 5. And here we have on the left, although it's difficult to make the comparison because of the wide margin, but on the left is the Nestle Aland 28th edition. And finally, here on the left is the Tyndale House Greek New Testament. Now, if you're only interested in the English, you could use this. This is from lulu.com. It is an 8.5 by 11 format copy of the English only, much larger than Brenton, taller, wider than the Hendrickson Brenton, I should say. But it does have a larger font. It's about 9.5 points, maybe closer to 9, and it does include the page bottom notes. And so here on the left is the lulu.com font, and it is of course much larger, not as darkly printed, but easier on old eyes. Here's my older copy. This is the 6th printing from February 1997, so a little bit different on the cover. It's a slicker cover, very similar. The new one of course is a thinner volume, a little bit thinner, because the paper is slightly thinner paper. We'll take a peek at the inside. So here is the newer copy in Genesis 1, and look how dark the print is here. And here's the older copy with the slightly thicker paper, considerably lighter print. Paper is yellower, but that may just be age. I had planned originally to do some translation comparisons at this point in the video, but I think I'll break those out as separate short videos. And what I'll do here is close this video with just making some observation about Brenton. First, Brenton uses some archaic language, but it's not quite like the King James Version. It does use thou sawest and thou drawest, but it has God has instead of God hath, which was fairly common back in the 19th century. He arranges the books in their modern order, so it is not based on any particular manuscript of the Septuagint. The Psalms in Brenton are numbered according to the Septuagint, with the Hebrew numbering in parentheses. If you look at Psalm number 9, you'll find that the verses are not numbered consecutively. The verse numbers return to number 1 at where Psalm 10 begins in the Hebrew. Brenton arranges the material in Jeremiah, as in the Septuagint, and he provides a table on page 971 that allows you to map back to the Hebrew and to the Vulgate. Brenton's Daniel follows Theodotion, so he's not following the old Greek text, he's following Theodotion's Greek in Daniel. And finally, it's difficult to decide where to put the LXX unique portions of Daniel and Esther that appear back in his apocryphal section, how to connect those with the other portions that he puts in the canonical portion of the book. So how to arrange those, you have to look elsewhere to other resources to find that. I found no notes in Brenton that explain how to do that. So as a brief summary, on the plus side you have a darkly printed text and fairly nice, relatively opaque paper. On the negative side you have a very small English font. Oh, I should add in the plus side you have a perfectly readable Greek font. But on the negatives you have a very small English font, and you have a narrow inner margin, and a glued binding. So thanks very much for watching this video. I hope you found it useful. If you did like it, remember to hit the like button, and if you're interested in subscribing to the channel, you're certainly welcome to do so. Thanks very much for watching.